Hi everyone, this is Haley with US Cutter, and today I'm going to be walking you through the setup of your new cutter. So whether you got an MH, an SC2, a Titan, maybe a Prism Cut from us, or you've had a cutter for a while that you're ready to finally take that step to set up, maybe you got it for the holidays. Whatever the case might be, this video is going to serve to help you get right into that first cut. So you finally unboxed it, you got it out, and you're ready to get into how to use it. That's what this video is for. We're going to be setting you up from step 1 to step 5 when getting ready to make that first cut. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is step 1. You're going to make sure that your blade holder and your blade are set. So your blade holder is this thing here. It's on the carriage. So it's held in by this little screw. Unscrew that and you can take that out. And today we're going to be working with the Prism Cut. We have other cutters, obviously, but the Prism Cut is probably our most user-friendly, so we wanted to use that one today, especially because of this UI that we have here. Very intuitive UI. It's going to track you right through everything that you need to do as a beginner, but our other cutters do work really well for beginners or advanced, no matter what your skill level. Back to this blade holder, though. You're going to see this. Again, it goes right in there next to your carriage. You have a couple different screws here. This golden one is going to be what sets the silver one in place. The silver one being how far or closed your blade is. The blade is right in there, you can see. Sits in that little magnetic piece. So you can change those pretty easily. If you undo that gold screw, you could screw in or unscrew the silver. That's going to pull your blade depth in or out depending, and the blade depth is going to be right there. You can just barely see the blade. If you hold it really, really close, that blade is right there. So it's very difficult to see, but that's good because you want to make sure that this blade is just enough that you can cut through the vinyl, but you don't want to cut through the backing of it. So a good way to test that is just to take a Post-it notepad. You take that and you want to press it down pretty firmly and just drag that along. And that's my favorite way to test. So what you're going to see is that 1, 2, 3, and not quite through that 4th. And that's perfect. That's right where you want it to be because that'll go right through your vinyl. Today we're using a 651, but it won't go through your backing. Once you're satisfied with that, you're going to take it and put it back in. Get that screw nice and tight so that you're good where you want that blade holder to be. And now you're ready for step 2. Step 2 is going to be loading your media. So today, again, we're using 651 from Oracal. This is a 15-inch roll. 15-inch rolls can be a little tricky for some cutters because depending on where those pinch rollers align, pinch rollers being these things here, little black pieces that you'll see here and here. Depending on where those align, you want to make sure you're getting a nice even distribution of pinch rollers along your vinyl. So today I'm going to be trying to get pinch roller here and about here. That way I can get a nice even track as the vinyl pulls through the machine. And tracking is essentially, as the machine pulls your vinyl through, the longer that cut, tracking is how accurately you're going to have that vinyl pull straight through. So your goal is to get as even tracking as you can, so you want to make sure you're loading your vinyl in nice and straight. And you want even pressure on those pinch rollers. So you'll have a little lever in the back. Some have individuals on each pinch roller. Unlock those pinch rollers so they're no longer set in place. You can adjust these from here. You want to make sure that these pinch rollers line up with those grit rollers that you'll see on there. Some cutters will have little markings to tell you where to or where not to put these pinch rollers. So here, you just want to line these up. Should be right about there and there. And as you can see, that's going to give me a really even dispersal of my pressure from these pinch rollers. Now, when you're ready to lock those down, you just flip that back up and it'll lock those pinch rollers in place so you can't move them. But we're not quite ready for that because the material needs to be loaded in. So I have a stand behind my cutter today. You can also do this with an app roller. You could also just use it with the material behind the cutter, and I always prefer to load from behind. But in this case, we're going to take our material, feed it through, and it can be a little tricky to get it over that grit roller sometimes, so just make sure you're getting it nice and even through. You don't want to be pulling at your material. Line it up with that front lip so you can see that front lip there. Once it's aligned and you're happy with that, flip down those pinch rollers, and that'll make sure your material is nice and snug, held in right onto those grit rollers. I always take a little bit of extra material just to add a little bit of slack, if you could see that, just behind the cutter. That works really well if you're pulling from a bigger roll. So today we're only using a 15-inch and it's about 10 feet on this roll. And that's a smaller roll, but if you're using something a little bit larger, it can cause some stress on your motor as you're pulling through. So you always want to try to leave a little bit of slack behind that. So now that you have your material loaded and your blade holder set, the next step is to determine your origin point. The origin point is essentially the zero of your cutter. So where we're at right now, if we were to use this as an origin point, the cutter is going to read this as far this way as it'll go. So it'll start the cut here, and the material it would be saying to itself is here. Obviously that's not what we want, so we want to pull this origin point over here. Now this would be a standard origin point if we were loading material all the way up to this side. We actually purposely didn't do that today, simply so I could show you when you're doing an origin point. This is now the end of the cutter as far as it is concerned. That's your origin point. That is where all of your cuts will start. And that's good because it means that your material is from here to here. Now if your design comes off of that material, it'll go up until this point when it stops. There's no way to stop it there. That's just going to be based on your design, so make sure that your design is appropriate for the amount of distance that you have on your vinyl. Once your origin point is set, you're ready to go into step 4. Step 4 is going to be setting your speed and your pressure. Today we have a pretty standard vinyl. It's Oracal 651. Also pretty standard to use your 631 or your Caesar EasyWeed. Those are all pretty standard. You're almost always going to be using the same speed and pressure of a 470, 400 speed, 70 pressure. You can adjust those just by going in, sliding those down. So for example, if you're doing a really intricate design, lots of small cuts and lots of intricate details that you really want to capture, you might need to decrease that speed or increase that pressure to make sure that cut is right where you want it to be. Make sure those lines are nice and crisp. Today though, again, we're doing a pretty standard vinyl. One thing to point out though, cutters are all a little bit different, and even vinyls are a little bit different. So if you're using more specialty vinyls, you might need to adjust the speed or the pressure from the standard. You might need to use a 60-degree blade instead of the 45-degree blade. It does depend. It does take a little trial and error, and that's going to be where your test cut comes in, to make sure that you're getting a nice even cut before you start on your design, because we want you to waste as little vinyl as possible so that your design comes out just how you want it, and you don't waste time trying to weed something that's just not going to cut. Once you're happy with that speed and pressure, you go back, your settings are good. You are then ready for step 5. And the test cut, as I mentioned, is going to be making sure that your machine is ready to cut whatever your design might be. You want to make sure you can weed that design, whatever it might be. And weeding, when you're talking about vinyl, is essentially taking anything in the design that you cut that you don't want to transfer onto your window, to your wall, to your shirt, to your hat, your mug, whatever it's going to be. You want to make sure that you're only putting the vinyl there that belongs there. So weeding is going to be a nice little test cut to make sure that you can do that. You're going to see, you just press that test cut. It's going to be very similar with all our machines. It's going to make a nice little square. Sometimes it'll make a square within a square. And you can see just there, just barely visible. You take a weeding tool. In my case, I prefer a dental pick. I find that it gives me a nice little way to get under those edges and pull it up. Nice and smooth and easy. And as you can see, you got a nice little square there, and that tells you that your machine is ready to cut, which means you're ready to cut whatever your design is going to be. So in this case, you're now ready to take whatever design is in your head and put it on whatever you're ready to put it on. So you've now gone from unboxing to ready to cut, and it only took 5 steps.